Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. Want to bring an update on these markets as we are starting to see a little bit of a bounce. Finally some green on the board today after a brutal sell-off over the last 2 days. And so is it over? Are we done? Can we come out of the bunkers? Come out of hiding? Is crypto about to rally again? I'm going to go over some items to look at, some specific price points to watch near term as well as some of the longer term time frames. Looking at the daily chart here, you can see Bitcoin on Bitstamp has had that big sell-off off of the highs, and we saw the last couple of days some very big drops. It was feeling a little climactic yesterday as we had that big volume drop. We were looking for a bounce, and if you go into the shorter time frames, I mean, the bounces were far and few between. They were just very short-lived. Once we broke from that 7K, we went a long ways down before we actually saw any sort of a real bounce attempt. The first bounce attempt came in when we hit the lows just around that 6100 mark. We saw some climactic selling. It was a big sell-off and a quick reversal. That was the first real sign of the bulls starting to defend. And here today we're seeing some really good action. It looked like we were about to break down from another bear flag, and it was a little bit of a shakeout, a bear trap if you want to call it that. Let me show you guys what I'm looking at here. You can see we had that big sell-off, and then we had a little bit of a rally attempt on lower volume, and then we looked like we were breaking down on the hourlies, and then that turned into a very quick reversal bar, and the 4-hour finished high. So that's very positive to see about the buyers stepping in there at those levels. You can see the volume. Let me pull the volume up here. You can see the volume was absolutely higher than the prior several 4-hour candles, and so that's a good first sign. It is important to note that we have closed below the 10 EMA on that 4-hour, and prices are still technically below this price resistance level, so we need to clear, this little zone here. But if it can rally above that, there is quite a bit of open space before we hit the next major resistance point. And by that I mean you can see a pretty good bounce up until this next resistance going into around 6,900. And so that's not a small bounce. I mean, you're talking about a potential 6 to 7% move in Bitcoin, and in many of the alts that'd be much larger. And so that is the positive, the fact that we had this big outside reversal bar on that 4-hour candle, a little bit of a double bottom type of action showing up here, and now we're starting to see the first test of upside. So shorts are probably getting a little nervous. You're going to see a little bit of covering, a little bit of short covering rally into this, but is it over? Well, let's take a quick look at the longer term time frames. I don't think it is personally, but I do expect to see some sort of a bounce here and a little bit of a counter trend rally following this couple of weeks of just very bearish action. And so you can see the 10 EMA on the daily lives up here around that 6,900 zone, just shy of 7K. So this will continue to drift lower as prices bounce, and so that's going to be the first test when these two start to meet up. Where that happens, it just depends on how fast the bounce happens, assuming we get a bounce, and that's going to be anywhere between 6,800 and 6,900 is where I'm expecting those two to meet. And then at that point we'll have to see if that's it. It's just a counter trend bounce and we continue lower. Another way to look at it is if you do some Fib analysis on the bounce, you can see here the 382 level puts us right at 69.50 on BTC, so also lines up relatively well with that scenario. The thing to note here is during my last live stream, some of you guys were asking how low can we go, and I think at the time we were probably around 6,600 during the live stream, and I said 6,200 was the next stop. I was looking at the low of this right shoulder that formed on this big pattern. That's where the last major price support was, and you can see that's basically where prices held. We had that quick dip which took us to around 6120, 6140 depending on the exchange you're looking at, but that lined up very closely with this right shoulder here that we formed on this big pattern, and so that was the last major price support. Below that there isn't any major price support until the lows at around 5,800, and you guys know where I stand. I said if we break 6,800, there's a good chance that we're going to head straight to 6K, and in that scenario I don't expect 6K to hold. And so I'm still going to be taking a cautious stance here, still taking a cautious approach. I don't believe the worst is over yet, but we could have just seen the low here. But for now, I'm just treating it as a bounce, and that's it. The daily RSI came down to 30. And so very often it tends to bottom there, and maybe we'll test it again. So those are the two scenarios to be looking out for here. What I'm going to be looking for here is a little bit of a bounce trade, and then we may start to roll over again. And if we break these lows at 6,100, you're going to see that 5,800 tested, and it's a matter of whether or not that holds. And we'll have to just wait until then. But for now, there is a lot of open space to the upside. Let me show you Bitcoin Cash here. So I'm going to go to the 4-hour chart here. If a lot of these names can continue this rally, they're attempting to clear resistance right now. So we have no way of showing confirmation yet. There's absolutely not confirmation. This is the first sign. It's a bullish reversal candle. Now we got to see it follow through. But you can see that there's quite a bit of open space until the next major resistance point. And so from current levels, you're looking at about 11-12%. And even if it doesn't retrace that whole amount, there's still a lot of open space. And so there are certainly some opportunities there that I'm looking at for some bounce trades here. Cardano was one of the ones that was moving sooner than some of the others. You can see it's testing resistance here. It's got to get above this 1240. And then above that, you're looking at around 13. Looking at Ethereum, you can see here, same scenario, very similar chart to BTC. And getting above that 370 or so will give it some room to run. Looking at near 400 as the next target, so that'd be the level that I'm looking at. And so from current prices, you're looking at about another 8 to 9% potential upside room if this bounce continues. And so that's the first targets that I'm looking at, playing it very tight, very conservative at this point, not expecting a full retracement. And even if that is the low, it's very rare to see those V bottoms. And so most likely what you'll see is you'll see a rally, then you'll see a test of those lows, either a double bottom or a higher low, and then a rally. And then at that point, we'll have to reassess as to whether or not that was a pretty good low. I'm going to be looking at other things such as volume and some other indicators. You want to see some of the moving averages invert and cross over again. So just taking it one day at a time as always, and keeping a tight lid on these things until we start to see some more bullish confirmation. For now, in the big picture, the bears are still very much in control. You can see we've had these bounces along the way, but they've just been that, bounces until now. And so things have absolutely been sold off to the lows here. You can see Ethereum hitting these key support levels and trying to show some support right there, but the bulls are just going to have to prove themselves at this point. The momentum is absolutely in favor of the sellers, and the bearish trend remains. So just keep that in mind. I do expect some bounce action here, but we've got a long ways to go before we can say that was the low. But for now, it's absolutely looking a lot more positive here in the short run than it was looking yesterday. But looking at the market cap here, you can see we've had this huge slide in the market cap over the last month, and we were bottoming at around $220 billion yesterday at the lows. So we're seeing a little bit of a bounce from that. The BTC dominance continues to rise. It's back up to the near 49% mark. And so you're seeing a little bit of growth there as the alts continue to underperform Bitcoin, even as Bitcoin continues its slide overall. So that's where we're at for today, guys. Just wanted to drop that quick update. Appreciate you guys watching as always. Until next time, happy trading, everyone.